My name is Mikael Rowland, and my book report is on Lost Falls, created and produced by Curt Pires. Lost Falls was published on August 3rd, 2021 by Curt Pires via one of his many companies, Tech Content. The art was done by Antonio Fuso, Pier Luigi Minotti. The color art was done by Lee Lowridge, and the letter art was done by Micah Myers. The length of the comic is 130 pages in total, and due to its length, I would classify this work as a comic series, this publication being the first of the 4 that are currently published. Now, though we see the detective walk through the waterfall that leads him to Lost Falls on page 7, I really believe that Act 1 begins on page 8 when Detective Daniel Pynchon wanders along the edge of Lost Falls at the town sign and is directed into town to the local motel. The stranger's indifference to his confusion creates a normalcy that keeps the detective from questioning anything and pulls him further into the story, which basically pulls the audience further into the story. Act 2 begins on page 38, where the apparition leading Detective Pynchon takes him straight to the murder of the latest of the entity's body snatchers. We get to see a large instrument in Daisy Summers' character arc, as well as the actions leading to this climax, and the process of the body snatching on pages 27 through 32. This is what really sparks the detective's involvement in understanding and conquering the entity, and most importantly, why he has been led to Lost Falls. His arrest, because of his finding the murder, leads him to all the subsequent events that happen after this, and the eventual resolution. I believe Act 3 begins on page 76, where we are introduced to the Overlook, which is basically a facility where all of the greatest minds that are brought to Lost Falls try to figure out where they are and why they've been brought there and what exactly is going on. From this point of the story, it's explained why the detective has no memory of arriving, the delicate balance between those that serve the entity and the entity itself, as well as the importance of Daisy Summers' involvement with the entity. By way of her mother and her ex-boyfriend, who were both possessed and killed, as well as her father and herself when they are attacked as well on pages 93 through 96. The eventual resolution comes when the detective saves her and her father by taking their place and offering his body for the entity, which allows him to return those previously snatched by this particular one. This is seen on pages 115 all the way to the end at 129, where we see the detective successfully rescue a few previously snatched people. The story seems to be written from the perspective of Detective Daniel Pynchon, who wakes up in the town of Lost Falls with no recollection of how he arrived. His goal is to find out what is going on in the town and why he's been brought there after he's led to the latest murder at the hand of the town's entity / monster, or the antagonist. The flashback that immediately follows the start of the act on pages 42 through 52 and his arrest show us the moments leading up to his entry into the town. After being questioned and suspiciously released, he is then led by the character Isaac towards at least one of the answers he's been looking for. This transition directly leads us to Act 3's reveals, all of them. And in the background of this act, we are introduced to just how influential this being, this antagonist, is in the life of Daisy Summers, as well as the interpersonal relationship the entity has with the town as a whole, as well as with a select few members. Act 2 shows us that the entity has taken her mother, and then now with this latest murder, her ex-boyfriend, even though he's not a great guy, she's still like deeply heartbroken. And the entity feeds off of the pain and the agony and the despair, and all the bad deeds that a person ever does. And then we see that there are a few members who worship this entity and even bring him or them. There's a vague hint that they give us that the entity is more than one that controls this town. So we'll see in the other books if I so choose to read them. I did feel that this comic had a solid story arc. The beginning gives the audience the question of what and where is Lost Falls. The middle incites more mystery with the infighting within the antagonist group, because the entity actually, when they bring somebody to it, they kill all of the members of the worshipping like clan or cult, I guess, that came to like offer up another person. So that was like really interesting, and it really like drove the story forward and kept me interested throughout, to see how that turned out. And then the end, it provided both a satisfactory resolution with the detective saving a few people, but also an enigma that keeps us invested to want to read the next installment. Because like now we get an understanding, especially with the closing I guess poem that they put at the end, that hints to the real, I guess, purpose of this town of Lost Falls, and that is to basically be a black hole or an energy source of all the bad deeds of humanity and all of that. The only other character that I really got to see any sort of character arc with was Daisy Summers, the sheriff's daughter, who seemed to have the most interaction with the entity and monster. She gets more, I guess, interaction with it because of when her ex-boyfriend is killed. When her ex-boyfriend is killed, even though she left him to walk home on his own because he was like smoking, I think it was crack, off of another girl and like banging her in the bathroom, which is like not great. So yeah, she takes his keys and is like, "You're too drunk," and she drives herself home. And she goes to check on him the next day, and she finds out that, he's dead. And she doesn't know it's the entity at the time, but when it all comes down to it, you see that, she's vital to the story, because the entity, like, it lives off of that. It lives off of all the bad deeds that were done to her by the people. So like by her ex-boyfriend treating her bad, it feeds off of that despair that she feels because of that, but also the despair of losing him as well. So that was like a great thing to see. And we get to see everything explained. Well, not everything, but her involvement explained on page 56 when her friends console her, and she talks about how she thinks it's her fault because A, she loved him, and B, it seems to always happen to her. Although in hindsight the transitions were effective and did help in establishing the story, when I first read it I had some trouble following along at first. After rereading, however, and going back to McCloud's ideas of transitions, I did have a better understanding of the team's reasons to align the scenes as they did. I feel that this comic falls under a subject-to-subject transitional piece. Although the story most closely follows one character, the writers transition through several different subjects that tie the entire story together. When reading the story with this transition in mind, it helped to broaden my understanding of the story. For the majority of this work, the story makes use of the page as a mini comic idea. For example, pages 47 through 50, though some of them have no words, there's enough action to pull the audience to the next page and enough information to kind of give them more insight into what's going on. The story also makes effective use of directional flow as well, doing the same thing, pulling the reader through the story. I definitely had no issues of figuring out where to read next, and I definitely saw the effectiveness when reading conversational blurbs between multiple people, like on page 59. The artists, they like the way they positioned the blurbs was like perfect for the flow of conversation. I would recommend this story to classmates as it is a great example to utilize when looking for a guideline on how to execute this type of transition and timeline style. And I would recommend it to my friends because it does reference biblical ideas and real life application in them in, personal creative works. And my friends and I enjoy works that challenge complacent thinking and innovative historical works to the writer's benefit. So this is a great work to share. I didn't really have any other observations to make, but a fun fact on this book is that it marks the writer's / producer's third collaboration with Comixology. So this series is their third collaboration with the company, which I thought was cool. So success for them.